The invitation arrived not as a letter, but as a digital ghost-to-high-resolution video file that flickered onto Leo's cracked smartphone screen while he was sitting in a cramped studio apartment in North Hollywood. Leo was a freelance videographer, the kind of guy who lived on cold brew in the hope of a viral hit. The message was simple. I heard you're the best with a gimbal. Come to Bel Air tomorrow, 10 a.m. Bring your gear, DB. Everyone in the city knew those initials. Dan Bilzerian was more than a man. He was a brand, a myth, and a walking, talking embodiment of the more is more philosophy. The next morning, Leo's beat-up sedan felt like a mechanical insult to the neighborhood. As he wound his way up the pristine asphalt of Bel Air, the air grew thinner and more expensive with every turn. When he reached the gates of the mega mansion, they hissed open like the entrance to a sovereign nation. Standing there, framed by a fleet of white supercars that looked like they belonged in a sci-fi film, was Dan. He was exactly as he appeared on social media, bearded, barrel-chested, and wearing a look of casual indifference that suggested he owned the sun and was merely renting it to the rest of the world. You the camera guy? Don asked, his voice a low rumble. He didn't wait for an answer. The house is 105,000 square feet. We're doing a walkthrough. Don't miss the details. The details are why people hate me, and the details are why they watch. Leo clicked his Sony A7 SIII into the DJI Ronin stabilizer, checked his levels, and nodded. I'm ready. See the beast. They started in the grand entryway, a space so cavernous it had its own microclimate. The walls were sheets of book-matched marble, and a sculpture that looked like it cost more than a Midwestern zip code sat in the center. Leo moved like a shadow, circling Dan as he walked. The scale was dizzying. Dan pointed toward a glass-walled garage that housed a collection of Ferraris and Lamborghinis, their paint jobs shimmering under custom LED arrays. People think a house is for living, Dan said, gesturing toward a massive living area that could have hosted a professional basketball game. A house like this isn't for living. It's for experiencing. It's a stage. As they moved deeper into the mansion, the sheer audacity of the architecture began to weigh on Leo. They passed the wellness center, which featured a cryotherapy chamber, a sauna lined with Himalayan salt bricks, and a gym that put most professional athletic facilities to shame. Don stopped to check a message on his phone, leaning against a rack of gold-plated dumbbells. Is it ever enough? Leo asked, his curiosity getting the better of his professional distance. Dan looked up, a faint, shark-like grin touching his lips. Enough is a moving target, kid. If you stop, you're just another guy in a nice house. You have to keep the momentum. They transitioned into the entertainment wing, and this was where the story of the house truly began to unfold. They passed a movie theater with velvet seats so deep you could lose a small child in them, and a wine cellar that looked like a high-security vault. Then, they turned a corner, and the sound of their footsteps changed from the click of marble to the polished thud of wood. Now, this, Dan said, is the soul of the wing. Before them stretched a full-service, professional-grade bowling alley. It wasn't a novelty or a toy. It was a sleek, two-lane masterpiece of mid-century modern design fused with futuristic tech. The walls were lined with custom-made bowling balls, each engraved with Dan's logo. The pins were reset by a silent, high-speed robotic system, and the overhead monitors displayed graphics that looked like they were designed by a video game studio. You bowl? Dan asked, picking up a matte black ball. A little Leo lied. He hadn't been in an alley since a middle school birthday party in the valley. Put the camera on the floor. Get the Langle shot of the release, Dan commanded. Leo obeyed, framing the shot as Dan stepped onto the approach. There was a focused intensity in the way the man moved. Why did we talk of parties and excess? Dan approached the game with a calculated precision. He swung the ball back, his form surprisingly disciplined, and released it with a powerful hook. The ball roared down the lane, a dark blur against the polished wood, and smashed into the pins with a sound like a small explosion. A strike. Action and reaction, Dan said, watching the pins get swept away. That's all life is. You hit the pocket, you get the reward. They spent an hour in the bowling alley, Leo capturing the movement, the lights, and the strange juxtaposition of such a communal blue-collar sport being housed in a temple of ultimate luxury. But as they filmed, the tone of the tour shifted. The initial awe Leo felt began to transform into a deeper observation of the man himself. Dan was restless. He was constantly checking his reflection, constantly adjusting his stance, constantly looking for the next room before they had even finished with the current one. "Why the bowling alley?" Leo asked, as they packed up the tripod. "Of all the things you could put in a house of Shark Tank, a helipad, why bowling?" Dan sat on the edge of the ball return, looking down the long, empty lanes, "'Cause it's one of the few things you can't fake. You can buy the lane, you can buy the shoes, you can buy the best ball in the world. But when you stand at the line, it's just you and the pins. The house doesn't help you there. The money doesn't help you there. It's a reminder." It was the first moment of genuine vulnerability Leo had seen. It lasted perhaps 3 seconds before Dan's phone buzzed again, and the mask of the professional hedonist snapped back into place. "Let's move to the roof," Dan said. "I want to show you the view of the city. That's the money shot." The roof was an acre of entertainment space, featuring an infinity pool that seemed to pour directly into the Los Angeles basin. From up here, the city looked like a circuit board, glowing with millions of tiny lives. Leo filmed the sunset, the sky turning a bruised purple and orange, while Dan stood at the edge looking out over his kingdom. "You got what you need?" Dan asked, his silhouette sharp against the horizon. "I think so," Leo replied. "I've got the cars, the gym, the bowling alley, and this. It's a lot to process. It's meant to be," Don said. "If people aren't overwhelmed, I haven't done my job." As Leo began to pack his gear into his bags, he felt a strange sense of exhaustion. It wasn't just the physical act of carrying the equipment. It was the sensory overload of the Bel Air mega mansion. Every room was a statement, every hallway a gallery, every amenity a challenge to the concept of moderation. Yet, as he walked back through the house toward the front entrance, he found his eyes drawn back to the bowling alley. The lights were dimmed now, the automated system having powered down into a standby mode. In the shadows, the 2 lanes looked long and lonely. He realized then that the mansion wasn't just a house or a stage, it was a fortress. It was a place designed to ensure that the occupant never had to face the silence of the outside world. The bowling alley, with its rhythmic crashes and mechanical resets, was a way to fill that silence with something tangible. At the front door, Dan shook Leo's hand. His grip was firm, his eyes already looking past Leo toward whatever was coming next. "Send the edit to my assistant by Friday," Dan said. "Make it look legendary." "I will," Leo promised. Leo drove his rattling car back down the hill. Away from the glass and marble and toward the neon chaos of the city, he looked in his rearview mirror. The mansion sat atop the ridge, a glowing crown of light. He thought about the bowling alley buried in its heart. He thought about the sound of that strike, the sudden, violent collision that broke the stillness of the mountain. He realized that the tour hadn't just been about a house. It had been a tour of an ambition that knew no ceiling. The Bel Air mega mansion was a masterpiece of engineering and ego, a testament to what happens when enough is discarded as a concept. But for Leo, the image that stuck wasn't the Ferraris or the infinity pool. It was the matte black bowling ball rolling down a lane in the middle of a palace, seeking a target in the dark. When he finally got back to his studio apartment, the space felt impossibly small. He sat at his desk, plugged in his hard drives, and began to scroll through the footage. He saw the marble, the gold, the glass, and the man who moved through it all like a ghost in his own machine. He began to edit, cutting the frames to the beat of a heavy driving track. He made it look legendary, just as he was told. But in the final cut, he left in a small moment from the bowling alley. It was a shot of Dan standing at the end of the lane after a strike, his shoulders dropping for just a fraction of a second. The weight of the mansion momentarily forgotten in the simple satisfaction of a game well played. Leo hit export and leaned back. He had toured the dream, documented the excess, and captured the soul of a place that was never meant to have one. The video was titled exactly what it was: a journey into a world where the lanes are always polished and the pins always fall, even if you have to build the whole mountain just to house the game. Touring Dan Bilzerian's Bel Air mega mansion with a bowling alley was more than a job. It was a glimpse into the heavy, glittering price of having everything. As the progress bar reached 100%, Leo looked out his window at the Los Angeles skyline. He didn't have a bowling alley, and his walls weren't made of marble, but as he closed his eyes, he could still hear the echo of the pins falling in the silent heart of the hill. He realized that everyone is looking for their own version of a strike, Some people just have a much larger audience watching when they throw the ball. Would you like me to write a follow-up scene where Leo sees the public reaction to his video?